Item 1, public hearing. Report regarding a resolution establishing sewer service rates for fiscal years 2017, 2018 through 2021 through 2022, amending the master fee schedule to include said rates, adopting the report of annual sewer rental and charges for fiscal year 2017 through 2018, and establishing maximum not to exceed rates for fiscal years 2018 through 2019 through 2021 through 2022. Mike Vitrell, City Manager, and Brian Schumacher, Water Quality Control Plant Superintendent.
This is an item on which, this is a very prominent item for our public hearing, so I open the public hearing at this time, and we will all listen to the staff report provided by the City Manager, Mike Futrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. I'm Mike Futrell, your City Manager, here to present the staff report on the proposed sewer rate plan for the years 2017 through 2022, a 5-year plan. Our wastewater treatment plant opened in 1952. It's been in continuous operations for 65 years. It is a joint operation between the City of South San Francisco and the City of San Bruno, with South San Francisco having 72% ownership and San Bruno having the balance of 18%, 20, the balance. On any given day, our wastewater treatment plant collects, cleans, and discharges into San Francisco Bay up to 62 million gallons every single day. In addition to the water quality treatment plant, the city also maintains over 165 miles of sewer collection lines, spider-webbed underneath our feet in South San Francisco, connecting every home, every business, every building through a system of 13 sewer pump stations, pushing whatever material that might be to the water quality control plant for treatment. At the water quality control plant, we have 54 full-time professionals who, as their career, are wastewater treatment specialists, fully qualified to treat and ensure the environmental safety of the bay. They operate 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, and have done so for the past 65 years. In South San Francisco, we have over 18,000 sewer system users. You can see from this chart that the majority, by number, are single-family residential, with nearly 11,000 sewer users, followed by multifamily residential apartments, 5,300 users. Our commercial sector is 1,594 users, and then the balance being essentially mobile homes at 356. When it comes to revenues, the sewer collection, conveyance, and treatment system is funded entirely through an enterprise fund, with revenue coming from commercial and residential users, as well as revenue received from new developments, which pay a connection fee. There is no general fund monies which subsidize the sewer collection, conveyance, and treatment system. The general fund dollars are reserved for things like police, fire, parks, and recreation. The sewer system must stand on its own. If we look at the revenue, unlike the actual number of users, commercial bears 52% of the burden, with over $10 million paid each year, followed by single-family residential, 6.3 million, multifamily apartments, 2.8 million, and then our 356 mobile homes, and other 187,000 per year. Interestingly and important to note, on a monthly basis, residents in South San Francisco pay $49 per month for their sewer system and connection, whereas the average commercial customer pays $536 per month. We do measure commercial differently than we do residential. Commercial pays a flat fee, just like residential. However, every working day of the year, we have an auditor visiting businesses in South San Francisco to actually look at what is being put into the sewer system by those industrial users, measuring total suspended solids, as well as determining the biological oxygen demand from what is placed. Many of our industrial users use solvents, other chemicals. Our food producers use salt. There's fats that find their way into the sewer system, which makes it much more difficult and a more longer process for us to clean and then safely discharge that into the bay. Therefore, our commercial users have a much higher monthly rate as a result. If you look at those commercial users a little deeper to see who they are, please note that due to privacy concerns, we're not able to say by name this business pays this much. Those type of tax information is kept confidential. But we can look at the broader industries, and we see that in South San Francisco, the biggest payer annually is our biotech industry, which pays $2.4 million each year in sewer user fees. They use a lot of water in biotech processes. The next are laundries, commercial laundries, you can imagine with solvents and detergents, $864,000, and then food manufacturing, nearly $400,000, with several bakeries in town, several candy manufacturers, and others. And we do audit all of those businesses to make sure that they are paying their fair share. When we look, again, just at the residential, and I think for some this is a bit of an eye chart, but the point being on the residential side at $49 a month, we are among the absolute lowest in San Mateo County. This is a comparison of every other sewer district in San Mateo County. On the far right, the big tall one, that's Hillsborough. But we are basically on par with Daly City, which is just a few cents less expensive. Then a little less expensive is East Palo Alto. Then a little less expensive is the very small district called Bayshore, which actually does not have a treatment plant. That's just a collection system. So right now, we are, compared with every other district in this county, among the lowest. Because we discharge up to 62 million gallons per day into San Francisco Bay, we are heavily regulated at every level, federal, state, local, and we must comply with those regulations. Our immediate regulator that has the most impact is the Regional Water Quality Control Board. It itself is regulated by the State Water Resources Control Board, and it itself is an arm of the federal EPA. So in that way, federal EPA regulations make their way down to South San Francisco, and our requirements for how we operate the wastewater quality control plant, and indeed our entire system. We obtained a new permit in 2014, and along with the new permit, which allows us to discharge into the bay, came new mandates from the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board and the State Water Resources Control Board. These new mandates have deadlines that we must meet and require us to install and construct major upgrades to our water quality control plant to ensure that what we are putting in San Francisco Bay is safe for the environment. And those are the mandates which have brought us here today, and those are the mandates that are requiring us to re-examine our sewer rate fees to make sure that the city is able to meet those obligations. Unfortunately, I think we all recognize not meeting those obligations is really not an option. There are cities who have failed around the country, and some locally, that have failed to meet their obligations, and you become open to fines, you become open to compliance orders, not just from government regulators, but also from private environmental groups such as Baykeepers, which have sued cities for their failure to maintain adequate environmental control and to meet the regulatory requirements. And I don't think that's a path that we as a city should go down. But so this has brought us to the point of having to re-examine our rate structure. And please note, these upgrades are not required, are not mandated by the new development that is happening in town. We have the capacity for the new development that is taking place. The upgrades of the plant are not the result of the new buildings, be they commercial or residential, but are absolutely related to the new mandates that are filtered down through from the EPA through to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. In fact, the new developments are helping to blunt some of the pain. All of the new developments and the new buildings, they will pay substantial sewer impact fees for the privilege of joining the system. There are some under construction today that paid sewer impact fees of up to $2 million just to join the system. Then after that, they pay the monthly fee, whatever that might be, based upon their usage. We do anticipate over the next 48 months, if all of the development that is in discussion and on the books takes place, that we will enjoy an extra $11 million from those new developments and those newcomers to town, and they are in fact paying their fair share to join the system. In order to examine our rate structure, we are governed by the California State Constitution, and specifically Proposition 218. The California State Constitution is very specific on how cities can and will re-examine and set sewer rate fees. The language was placed in the state constitution by Proposition 218, which the voters of California passed in 1996. Unfortunately, we as a city do not have the authority to deviate from the mechanism set forth in the state constitution. There have been quite a few comments, specifically at our public information meeting held on May 13th, May 16th, that we should have put this to a vote, or there should have been some other procedure. Well, in fact, our hands are tied by the vote of the people of California under Proposition 218, and we as staff, aided by our city attorney, we are following those guidelines. They're not guidelines, those mandates under Proposition 218 to the letter. On March 22nd, we presented the proposal to this council and sought permission to start the process. And then on April 28th, we mailed a public notice of the proposed rate plan to all parcel owners. Again, who we mail that notice to is dictated in the state constitution. It goes to parcel owners. For example, there was an individual who said, I didn't receive it, and it turns out his registered address was in Guatemala. I assume that because he's the parcel owner and his property tax address was in Guatemala, that it went to Guatemala. That explains it. But again, that's not a decision this council, staff, or this city can make. That's driven by Proposition 218. May 16th, we held the public information meeting. It was a well-attended meeting, I will say. And from my perspective, having attended the meeting, I had three general takeaways that I'll relate to council. One was unhappiness with the Proposition 218 methodology in general, and I just discussed that. Number two was a concern that the residents of our town just could not afford another increase of any kind in any shape, and a real concern for those of limited means who live in our city. And number three was a perception that the commercial and industrial users in our city are not paying their fair share, and somehow the residents are bearing the burden as opposed to the commercial. Those were the takeaways from my perspective at the public information meeting. Know that in addition, in Proposition 218, there are other restrictions that we're following. Principal among those is that users must pay according to their actual benefit. And it specifically prohibits any city from skewing rates from commercial to residential or residential to commercial if they are out of proportion to that group's actual benefit. So there have been suggestions, particularly at the public meeting, that perhaps we could raise the rates on commercial and leave the residential alone, or even lower the residential. The California State Constitution would specifically prohibit that. Our rates, as proposed, have been examined by an independent firm, Bartles and Wells, and they have certified that the rates, as proposed, are in proportion to the benefits for both the residents and for the commercials. So there is a balance which meets the test of the state constitution. If we look specifically as the rates as proposed, it is a 5-year rate plan. That alone presents some risk as we try to forecast what will the future look like in the next 5 years. We proposed initially 15% the first year, which equates to $7.33 a month for a residential user. 10% the second year, which equates to $5.67 a month for a residential user. You'll note that the increases are weighted on the front end because that's when the construction will start. And we need to meet the deadlines set forth by the mandates so we don't end up with fines and compliance orders. The next 3 years are 5 years apiece, which by month is $3.08 across the board, $3.25, and then $3.42. This was the rate plan as we understood it and proposed to council initially and presented to the public on May the 16th. Note that this is a risk-averse rate plan. As we look into the future for 5 years and trying to account for every contingency, we took a very cautious approach to make sure that the city would have enough revenue to complete the mandated requirements, because the flip side of not completing them on time is not a happy picture for the city. So this is a very risk-averse plan to ensure the city had enough money to complete its obligations. The risks specifically that we were concerned about, number one, is a recession. Will there be a recession in the next 5 years? If there is, revenues for the sewer plant will drop, particularly with commercial and industrial, which pays the majority of the sewer fees. The two other risks we're principally concerned with, one is construction cost. We all know construction costs have risen dramatically in just the last 24 months, and building enough of a financial cushion so that we can actually afford to build what is mandated by the state. The third is the interest rate on the loan, which gets a little complex. We will, on the front end, borrow against the 5 years of earnings so we can start construction right away, and we will borrow up to $55 million to make that happen. It is our hope and desire today, and it was then, that we're able to tap into the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which has an advantageous interest rate of 1.7%. However, there is a risk, and the risk was much greater on May 16th when we held the public meeting and when we originally presented these results. The Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund is administered by the federal EPA. The federal EPA, which our President Donald Trump has said he will cut and limit. And as of the time that we presented these rates, there was great concern that the EPA and the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund may not exist. If we are unable to tap into this loan fund, we're thrown into the private sector, where we will pay north of 4% on $55 million. And that delta between the 1% using the EPA loan fund and the 4.5% on the private market is very, very significant and would throw our finances askew. Well, what has happened since then, to be frank, is that these risks have come down. Although President Trump's budget, which was presented on May 23rd, just 1 week after our public information meeting, although his budget does cut the EPA by 31%, it actually increased funding for the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund from $1.4 billion, and they added an additional $4 million. So I think under even the worst of scenarios, that revenue stream is available. And we will apply, assuming this is approved tonight, we will apply in August for a loan with the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund I think since it made it into the first budget from President Trump, we don't foresee that it will get cut by the Republican Congress, but that's something that was unknown until the budget from the Trump administration was presented. The next risk that has come down a bit has been the risk of a recession, particularly in the next 24 months. Your staff spends a great deal of time trying to forecast the future, reading articles, listening to speakers on the economy, so that we as a city are prepared in advance if there is a recession. New job figures came out last week, which were reported to Council on Monday, which frankly showed anything except a recession. The unemployment rate in San Mateo County is the lowest in the state of California at 2.4%. And although the growth is expected to slow, it's not expected to drop and is expected to continue on a slower climb, not the kind of rocket economy we have seen in the last 36 months, but certainly not a recession. Buoyed by those reports last week on the state of California and the nation in general, we think that the risk of a recession in those two first critical years are lower than originally anticipated. And the first 2 years are the critical years. Well, we'll need those funds to begin the construction. With those in mind, staff is proposing and providing as an option to Council to adopt lower rates than those initially proposed. Now, note there is some risk. We are predicting the availability of low-interest loans. We are predicting no recession. We believe we have a handle, or at least an understanding, on construction costs. If at some point in the future, say 2019, 2020, there is some massive downturn, we might have to come back to this council chamber and discuss adjusting rates again. But staff believes that the risk is acceptable, and acceptable enough that this council can take that risk and, instead of passing these rates as originally proposed, pass lower increases and still get the job done. Those lower increases would essentially change the first 5 years. Unfortunately, that 10% in 2018, 2019 is required to make the financing work. But it would reduce all of the obligations for our residents. Instead of 15% the first year, 13%, and 10% the second year, and then 2%, 2%, 2%. So we believe that this lean financing plan will get the job done, and that working with you, we can manage the risk. What that would mean on a dollar basis, the first year is $6.33 a month. The second year, $5.50 a month, and the third year, $1.25 a month to make that happen. So from staff's perspective, and frankly, I thank staff and Public Works staff and their financial consultants who have worked tirelessly, particularly since the public information meeting on May 16th, with the new information to come up with a revised plan that we think will get the job done, yet allow as little pain as possible for our residents and commercial users. This again is an eye chart, but you have this in front of you. This is the same rates, just on an annualized basis. If we look at, with the revised plan, how does this break out between commercial and residential? We're basically keeping the same proportion, with commercial still paying the majority, slight majority, 52% of all of the fees. At no time are the residents paying more than commercial under this plan. This was a new handout. Again, some of this information, which allowed us to understand better our risk, was late breaking, and this was a handout, and I believe that was handed out as well to those in attendance. With this new rate, assuming council were to approve the rate structure, where would South San Francisco fit relative to the other districts in San Mateo County? Well, we are still near the lowest monthly rate in San Mateo County. The only city that has passed us up, if you will, is Burlingame, which is a few cents less expensive per month than South San Francisco, assuming that we were to if council were to approve these rates tonight. So it is still one of the bargains in San Mateo County. I will note that from staff's information, many of these other cities, if not most, are currently entertaining sewer rate increases right now for the very same reason. And last week, the city of San Mateo passed a 36% rate increase in the first year, and that was passed by their city council last week. So we are not the only city. In fact, I would think every city in California is having to address this issue of stricter mandates from the EPA down through the State Water Resources Control Board, and then we have to find a way to fund these mandates that are placed upon us. But even with the new rates, we are still at the lowest in San Mateo County. Recognize, and this was pointed out at the May 16th public information meeting, that even this relatively modest amount is difficult for some people to pay. And that was voiced pretty clearly at the public information meeting. There was a resident who stood up and asked pointedly, would the city consider and study a program for those with limited income to provide assistance with the sewer rates? At that time, we agreed to look at that, and staff has looked at that. And there are some cities in California that have a program, and we believe and recommend to you that that program has merit. And later tonight, we will consider our operating budget for the next year, and staff has included in the operating budget a program for those residents of limited income so that they can apply and get some assistance for the sewer rates. So it would be a new program to rebate a portion of the sewer fees for income-restricted users. Right now, we're recommending $60. And as far as administering it, because we as staff, we really don't want to look at people's tax returns and determine whether they're income qualified or not. If a resident is already enrolled in either the PG&E or the Cal Water Low-Income Assistance Program, we'll take that on faith that they are qualified. And then they show to us that, yes, in fact, I am paying the sewer fees, which would be reflected in their property taxes. And then they could apply to the city for a rebate. So again, that is in the operating budget, will be considered later. But between a combination of adopting a leaner rate plan with some risk and providing help for income-restricted residents in South San Francisco, I would think this council has done all it can do while still meeting the mandates of the EPA and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Now with that, I will turn the presentation over to Brian Schumacher, who is the manager of our water quality treatment plant, who will talk a brief moment about the specifics of what has to be done at the plant. And if there are questions about technically what must be done at the plant, I will tell you he is the guy, but I will stand by for questions as well. Brian?
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Brian Schumacher, your plant superintendent. I'm going to wrap up the presentation this evening. First, I want to say I'm proud to be a wastewater professional. I've been a wastewater professional for the city of South San Francisco since 2001. I have been involved for the last 3 of 6 plant upgrades. That button. As City Manager Futrell presented, our rate plan is heavily driven by our regulators. They do mandate that we comply with increased treatment standards at the treatment plant, some to our infrastructure, some will require increased treatment levels, and most importantly, the effect that we have on the impact of the San Francisco Bay health. Regulators have driven our current discharge permit, particularly in 2 areas. First area is going to be the reconstruction of 2 of our solids handling tanks, referred to as anaerobic digesters. And the second area is going to be reliability and treatment enhancements to the treatment plant. The next slide will look at specific infrastructure projects such as the digester project and treatment enhancements. Digesters are tanks used to process and treat the solids in our wastewater treatment plant. 2 of our 3 digesters that are being recommended for reconstruction were built originally in 1949 and have been in service since. Structural engineers have determined that these 2 tanks are no longer seismically safe and that they need to be demolished and reconstructed. Digester number 3, however, was built in 1964. It does have reinforced concrete. The structural engineers are recommending for that tank that we can retrofit it and bring it up to seismic standards by increasing the wall heights. In regards to treatment plant enhancements that will bring our treatment levels up so that we have full secondary treatment, we will have process improvements, to some existing treatment basins. We'll be adding another tank to treat waste to a secondary standard, raising the main compliance wall of the conveyance channel that will get the water through the plant to meet our higher secondary standards being imposed by our regulators, and miscellaneous projects to help with storage and rehabilitation of some older electrical switchgear. This slide I wanted to show to you, despite the population growth in the Bay Area since 1955, the pollutant loads of concern, total suspended solids and biochemical oxygen demand, have actually gone down since the introduction of the Clean Water Act around 1975. We can see that these levels, despite population increase, continuously going down. And that really shows the effectiveness of the regulators on all of the treatment plants in the Bay Area. So we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we're complying, and it's working. It's working very well. So in closing, our current rate plan, again, is driven by our regulators. That they mandate what we must comply with, and we're doing a very good job, as are all of the treatment plants in the Bay Area. By doing what is required, we indeed are improving our receiving water, which is the San Francisco Bay, and we're being very effective. And with that, we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for both staff presentations. And if it's okay with the council, we'll continue with the public hearings to hear public comments before we start our discussion for the council. And I have 11 or so cards right now in my hands where public would like to join in the discussion. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. It makes all of us feel good when our community joins us in the conversation. We are talking about our own future. We all have our own homes here too, so we are just like you. So it's so good to see all of you here. So I'm going to call out the names, but because we have 11 cards in my hands, and I'm going to allocate 3 minutes for each one of them, that makes it about a little bit more than half an hour for the public comments alone before we go into the discussion. But in order to honor everybody's right to 3 minutes, I'll request that each speaker be brief and keep track of their times. And if you can avoid repeating a point that has been made and talked to the council already, you might mention that you support it. You don't have to go over the same points again and again. I really respect your inputs into this process, and I certainly would like to make sure that each one of you gets a chance to be heard on what you have to say. And I'm going to be calling out the names. If by chance you have not put in a card yet, there's still time. You can write one of those yellow cards and give it to our clerk, and he will pass it on to me. So my first name would be Margaret Baxter, who came earlier. She wanted to talk on this topic, but she ended up in the public comment section. So here's your chance.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I just want to address what the manager, the general manager, said about Proposition 218. He did not say that if 51% of the people protested it, it would not go into force. He did not address that. Okay, I have another question. Right now in Sacramento, there's a Bill 231 going through. Does anybody know what that is, or can you explain it? It's about water. So it is. The Assembly is going to vote on it tomorrow. The Senate voted on it on Monday. That is another thing that needs to be addressed. Okay, now I think that we can cut down on a lot of the rubbish going into the sewer drains. I live on Miller Avenue, and I come down Forest View to Grant Avenue 5 mornings a week. And the cars are all parked on the right. The streets never get swept. And the leaves from the trees are all there, and the sewer drain is always covered over. That is from Grant Avenue to Forest View, 200 feet off Grant Avenue. And then you have the street, the blowers, the garden blowers. They do the lawns, and they blow the stuff out on the street and do not pick it up. So anyhow, I protested the water charge, the sewer charge, and then I also think that the commercial, they can write that off in their part of doing business. So it is. So we cannot be compared to the commercial, because that is part of doing business for commercial. If you're ever in business, you can write all that thing off. I was a landlady at one time for 25 years. I wrote off all my expenses on my rental house, including the sewer. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Next card I have is Anna Nasteri. Anna?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Thank you very much. And Mr. Patel. First of all, I wanted to confirm that a letter that was handed and delivered to the City Council was received, and that was from the West Winston Manor community. I would, if it was received, thank you very much for reading it. And I was going to go ahead and go through all the information that you provided in your presentation and how we're concerned with the inequality of the application of the percentage on residents and commercials. But I really want to thank you on behalf of everybody that you are reconsidering. And we hope that you do go ahead and readjust your numbers, because it is a big impact on the residential area. So thank you very much. And we'll continue to be in communication, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Next one is Larry Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the comments of the city manager and the superintendent. It was very informative. With that information, I'm happy to see that the city is willing to moderate the increases to start. That is reassuring, and I appreciate that. A couple of items I'd like to address, though, happens to be about the presentation of this particular proposition to the citizens. You know, we got the one notice, came in the mail. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a number of my neighbors, and I talked to 12 before the first one said, "Oh yeah, I remember that." The 11 said, I don't remember getting that. I never saw that. So I guess I'm appealing to you to be a little more outgoing on the outreach aspect of this. If we had been presented with a lot of information you presented tonight, perhaps in a communication way, it would relieve some of the fears and concerns from the citizenry, okay? I contrast this process with what went on last year with Measure W. Every day it seemed like we were getting information about justification, what we're going to do with it, and so forth. Here in this, we got this notice, and there really was not a lot of justification. I mean, you told us what you wanted to do, what you wanted to use it for, projects and so forth, but very general, okay? We have no idea for example, the enterprise fund. Is there a reserve there? How much reserve do you keep? You know, things like that. The other thing, for example, is I understand the contract that we have with the city of San Bruno, and I forget the other, Colma perhaps, that we process sewage for them. And checking with those cities, there's no indication they're presenting their residents with a proposal to raise rates. So, I mean, we may just not know that. But that's something that you can communicate way in advance so that there's not a lot of built-up resistance that I've sensed from talking to some of the people in the neighborhood after getting to understand that there is this thing underway. So anyway, essentially that's what I'm left with after a fine presentation by the city. So thank you so much, and I appreciate the willingness to be adjusted. Okay?
Thank you very much, Larry. And just in case there was a question, can you very briefly tell us whether Colma is part of our deal with it? They're not.
They are not. We process waste for the cities of San Bruno and South San Francisco. There's been some discussion about SFO, and I think, is it Millbrae or Millbrae? They just use our discharge pipe. We do not process waste for Millbrae or South San Francisco. However, we do have a pipe that runs I think, 1.5 miles or a mile into San Francisco Bay. And so SFO and Millbrae pay us for the privilege of, they treat their own waste, but they use our pipe. But actually at the plant, the only two cities that are processed are San Bruno and South San Francisco, and we do know that San Bruno right now is going through a sewer rate increase process as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I had a different understanding on the outfall line. Maybe Brian, did you get that right?
Mostly, yeah, might I add? No, you really did. In regards to the folks who share our outfall pipe, there's been an agreement in place since 1977, and it is fully treated wastewater that is joined at the effluent pump station at South San Francisco San Bruno's plant, and they do share the line about 1.5 miles into San Francisco Bay, and they pay a portion of the upkeep of that line, the operation and maintenance cost of that line, chemicals to dechlorinate our combined waters together. So it's all by agreement.
Thank you.
The question was who helps pay?
Who asked the question?
Member of the audience.
Yeah, I would like to again mention that this is a public comment period. I do not like to encourage or ask that we start a dialogue of any kind. Please make your comments, and if there's a clarification needed, I'll take care of that. But please do not talk to each other or to any other person on the dais from the audience. If you want to be recognized, please let me know, and at the end of the cards, I'll ask you to come and get your opinions. But please do not start a dialogue at this point in time. Are you done with?
And thank you. And one more clarification in regards to Colma. We do take some of their waste, and they are also considering a rate proposal plan this evening. Most of their wastewater does, however, go to the Daly City plant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Diane. I'm trying to read the name. Nesseter?
Newton?
Yes, please.
N-E-W-T-O-N?
N-E-W-T-O-N. I'm sorry, Newton. It's my eyesight.
Well, thank you for letting me speak and ask a question or two, Mayor and City Council. My outburst was just to try to go ahead and get the additional cities that share in the maintenance and upkeep of the operation. Some of what I was concerned with has been spoken about, but I just want to let people know that I have been in my same home, small house, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, for 46 years so far, and there's a good chance that I could live because of genetics and such, to be 100, possibly more. Who knows? But what concerns me is that the ongoing and consistency of different fees and increases of everything going up, that there may be a day would come where I might not be able to afford to stay in my South San Francisco home. I've been there 46 years already, and I try to maintain, to take care of things to help the environment and my community, where I live, Winston Manor 1, and within the city of South San Francisco. And I'm just worried that someday I'm going to be sort of like booted out and not cared about. That's a major concern of mine, which I try not to overwhelmingly think about too much, but it is a concern, and like nobody else is really going to give a dang. I'm just hoping that this money is going to go towards things that need to be done, because quite often money is asked for and gotten from one way or another, and it's not put to its proper use. That's another thing that concerns me, and I don't have a way of knowing that. And I must also admit, too, that most everybody that I went around with to the last minute, they didn't even know what the heck I was talking about. I had to repeat the story over and over and over again, and so I'm not quite too sure about the communications, if that might be, maybe there's a better way of doing it. And these meetings on this one piece of paper, some people, I don't even know if they got it in my track, and if they did, how important it was to read, if somebody like me didn't go ahead and try to tell them. And some of them also, they have an attitude that why bother with anything, because it's not going to make any difference anyway. If you want your money, you're going to get it. So that's another feeling that some of neighbors have. So I have to try to get better prepared to be a resident of South San Francisco, so that next time when things come up, that I'll be better in knowing how to handle it. And if I don't, go down to City Hall and find out. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Next card I have is from Linda Redding.
Hi, good evening. My name is Linda Redding, and I live in Sunshine Gardens here in South San Francisco. And I'm here to oppose the rate increase, and thank you for your presentation. It was well put together. So first of all, the 40% over 5 years is exorbitant. It's way above any COLA increases ever, at least in my lifetime. And the second thing that I oppose is that this be the last of this discussion before a decision is made, because as he said, that there was the flyer sent out, which I have here somewhere. The flyer actually has dates on it that are inaccurate and in opposition to each other. So, for example, it said that the May 16th was Thursday, May 16th, and May 16th is a Tuesday. And then in one part of it, it said that the public hearing was June 14th, and that June 14th was the last opportunity to put in your opposition. And then in another part of the flyer, it said that it was June 28th. So I find that embarrassing that that came out from my city. I also think that, just kind of putting it out there, there's one of three options that I can see, and maybe there's a fourth. Someone's incompetent, someone's being lazy, or this is trying to be pushed through without all the citizens having all the information to be able to protest. So I feel kind of strongly about that. Also, I appreciate all the statistics, but I'd like to say that a house in Hillsborough that's a mansion on 5 acres with 7 bathrooms is going to have to pay more than my 2-bedroom, 1-bath home in San Francisco, South San Francisco, on my 4,500 square foot lot. I mean, if you actually do the comparisons, apples to apples, they're probably paying less than us. So statistics can be read any way that you want. They can be skewed however you want to skew them, and that's just the way it is. So I really appreciate your time, and I also just want to for anybody who's interested in opposing, I did do a generic letter that you would just have to put your information in and sign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Next card I have is from Mariette Vedder.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Vedder, and I reside at 203 Mansfield Drive. And many of the comments that the previous residents have said are also in my presentation. So I'm going to skip straight over to the notice, which we already talked about. We have here a very colorful other notice that lists everything that was happening in May, except the informational meeting. But anyway, I did attend the informational meeting. I don't agree it wasn't well attended. It was in a venue where there's 35 parking places at Magnolia Center, and probably 10 of them were taken up by city employees. But my point is, until the notice came out, very few of us were aware that the commercial minimum rate was exactly the same as the single dwelling rate. Now, we were told at the meeting that they're calculated differently based on uses, but that's not 100% true. I was employed for many years at the Swift Avenue warehouse complex, and after investigating tax records, which are public information, I was dismayed to learn that of the 35 addresses that I researched, only 3 paid more than I personally pay, $588, and none of them paid more than $785, which is less than $200. The rate of the single dwelling is not equitable to people like me, even though it's a blanket one for every single dwelling in South San Francisco. My usage is well under. I was told that it's a straight rate, and that's it, and it can't be changed. Their hands are tied. And there's many users that go above it, and they'd have a lot of homeowners complaining. Well, I'm standing here complaining over all the years I lived in South City. I did not use 8,400 cubic feet a year, but I have paid. So other people who use more don't have to pay more. Nobody has to deal with it. Projects of this size that need to be done, I understand that, but they take months into years of developing. And the property owners got, by law, the given 2 months' notice before the increases could be improved. Almost impossible to get 51% of all property owners, commercial and residential, to unite and try to fight this in 2 months. I'm concerned that the $77 million, which is on the bid, is going to go up, like you said. And, people on fixed incomes, it's going to be a hardship, even if there is going to be a $60 rebate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariette. Next card I have is Barbara Irvin.
My name's Barbara Irvin, and I live in Old Town, South San Francisco. I'm here with my sister, Virginia, who also resides in South San Francisco, and my mom, Elizabeth Irvin, who's been here over 90 years. I strenuously object to this proposed sewer rate increase, and you've continued to authorize building of new buildings. In Old Town alone, there's going to be 500 new residents in that area alone. I see it as 1,000 people. I don't think that the businesses are paying their fair share. And if I live in a house with one person and I pay that amount of money, and somebody lives in a house with 10 people and they pay that same amount of money, it doesn't seem fair. I also agree with the comments about fixed incomes. I'm on a fixed income. And like the woman before me said, I don't get a COLA of 20%. And in fact, somebody added the total that was proposed to be 47% by the time 2022 rolls around. Not the 5 here and the 10 here. It's 5 plus 10 plus 3 plus 5, whatever it is. That's 47% of your bill now. So that would be like a $200 and something increase. I also wanted to complain about the flyer. I went around to my neighborhood, and they all said, I didn't think it was important, I threw it out, I didn't even look at it. So I agree that what's been said here is that it was done like as fast as we could, slide it in, and don't let the citizens speak up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card I have is Sharon Albera.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'm here as a resident, but I'm also a member of Winston Manor Community Association, which you guys, most of you recognize that. I am here to voice that I am definitely opposed to the increase. I am still definitely opposed to your revision, Mike, unfortunately, especially the first year. I think that this increase is way out of line for many reasons. One, the flyer, as others have said, it states that the parcel number will be on the first line in our envelope, that this didn't come in an envelope. I had to look up my parcel number. This came looking like just a flyer that maybe somebody might be telling you something, but nothing really drastic, especially compared to the last sewer rate increase that we only just got finished this year, that was sent out on formal stationery from the City of South San Francisco in an envelope and from your offices. So this is a big difference. So it looks like people have said, that we're trying to force it through without anybody seeing anything or figuring it out. The other is, we did some checking also, as Meredith did, and we found out that there are several parcels, commercial, that are paying either none or the same rates as us, and we're residents. Okay? The other thing is, we calculated that at that informational meeting, we were told 77 million was going to be collected, and when you calculated everything out, it was 99 million. So there's been a lot of discrepancies that makes us real hesitant about what's really going on here. And as I said, we just finished a 10% increase over the last 3 years versus the commercial only getting 7%. How is this fair to the residents of South City? And then lastly, I attended the May 16th meeting, and I again also felt like it wasn't well attended, and that we should have had notification in 2 locations if that was what you were trying to accomplish, getting the one side of the city and the other side of the city, because as was stated, there was very few parking spaces, and so people didn't know where they would even park, so why bother? The people in those residents can't even park there. So let alone trying to figure out to park 35 stalls in Magnolia Center. It should have been done here at the very least. So again, it makes it look like we're trying to get bum rushed everything through and not trying to get any information out. Thank you very much. I still would like you not to vote it in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James Griffin.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I own a building on El Camino here, 872 El Camino. It's a small business building. We have a toilet and a sink and 3 people. And my sewer rates just keep putting it up and up and up. It's $676 added onto my taxes this year coming up, and we use very little water. There's no lawn, there's no car washing or anything. That of course is not allowed, and the only thing we have is somebody wash their hands and go to the toilet. That's it. And to keep raising the rates and raising the rates. So how do you calculate the rates for a small business like that? Is it just the same as a bigger one, or this is small? So that's all I have to say, but I just can't see how this is going to keep going up and up and up. So I object to the raise, of course. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Judy Look.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for having this session, and it's very informative tonight. But I think I have to agree with the people that have spoken before me that even with the reduced rate increase, it's still an onerous burden for those people on fixed income. Everything is going up. The water's going up. We have to have new water lines, new sewer lines. There's a lot of expense in a lot of areas. All the utilities are going up. So this is just one of many, and for people on a fixed income, it's quite difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, and the last card I have is Jackie Williams.
First of all, in fact, it's going to be really short. I would really like to say thank you for listening to the request I made to check a rebate. I came here tonight expecting nothing to be done, and I am so impressed you have no idea. And I also would like to say I'm in opposition to the increase in the rates for the same reason as a lot of people have spoken about, that when you're on a fixed income and you're looking ahead to the future and somebody raises your taxes, your sewer rate by 46% over 5 years, it's not very long to have a 46% rate increase. And I think there's a lot of people in South City that are in the same position I am. And I'd really like somehow for you to figure out a way to reduce it even more. I mean, $60 is really good, and I'm really happy that we started the process. But I think when you do come to start increasing things because you want a new building or you want to raise something, that you really think of the people in South City that have been here a long time, like I've been here since 1975, and just understand that it means a lot when you have these increases. I keep on hearing that it's a modest amount. Well, it's a modest amount if you're earning money, but it isn't a modest amount if you're on a fixed income. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not have any more card, but I'd like to invite anyone else who like to make their comments known to us. Also, I'd like to do this. We have had a number of protest cards, protest letters, and I want to give chance to anyone else who might like to put in their protest protest card into the numbers that we will be looking at. So in order to do that, I'm going to give a 5-minute recess of the council. During that time, if you have not filled your protest cards, you have still 5 minutes to do that and give that to the clerk, city clerk. And in the meantime, I'll request the council to take a 5 minutes break, and we'll reconvene after that. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are going to reconvene. And as I said, anyone who wanted to put in their formal protest, I hope you have done that and given those to our clerk, city clerk. And at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the discussion from the dais, from the council, where the discussion could take place based on what you have already told us from your comments, and also what staff report has told us, informed us about. So I'll open the council discussion at this point in time. Please, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, not the discussion part, but there was a question during our break from one resident. What's the timeline that we need to accomplish if there's any increase that's going to be put into effect? What's the timeline for the city?
Thank you. Once again, Brian Schumacher, your plant superintendent. Regarding the timeline, we're going to apply for state funding in August. We're finishing up our 90% review of the design. We're hoping to get the job bid by December of 2017, and we need to be in construction by March of 2018 to be in compliance with our discharge regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Schumacher. So if we're going to be asking for money in August, they'll probably want to know that we can pay it back.
Correct.
And it looks like tonight's the night? Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Diego. Before we proceed any further, I'd like to also ask any advice from the City Council regarding the numbers of protests and that kind of regulation.
Yeah, so now that the public hearing is closed, the city clerk can tabulate the number of written protests received, and then provided that it is less than a majority of the parcels in the city, the council's free to adopt the rate increase as noticed in the 218 public mailing. Whether you choose to do that, have the tabulation occur now or after council deliberation, it's at your discretion, Mr. Mayor.
So just to rephrase, as far as that part of the ordinance is concerned, we have not received enough protests so that the rate increase, proposed rate increase, will be automatically not accepted. So at this time, it's in the preview of the council to take any action on it.
I would ask the clerk to just clarify the numbers received.
Yeah, please do that.
Sure. We have received 384 protest letters. Out of those, 46 were invalid, which brings the total to 338.
And how many did we need?
Over 7,000.
Thank you very much. So now I open the council discussion, and Councilmember Rich Garbarino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, I have a question for you. It has to do with blending, and maybe you can explain what that is, but I understand we are currently blending stormwater and wastewater, and we're not going to be allowed to do it. Could you explain?
Sure, happy to clarify.
The ramifications of that and what that means to what we have to do to that plant to comply?
Our treatment plant has a discharge permit that we're currently under that allows blending of primary and secondary effluents. Water that meets a 60% reduction in total pollutants, and the other meets a greater than 95% reduction in total pollutants. Moving into our new discharge cycle that will begin in 2019, after the construction is complete, the plant will no longer be allowed and will be encouraged to minimize the amount of blending of effluents. So we currently have a capacity of 30 million gallons per day of secondary treatment. We are expected by the regulators and mandated by the regulators to meet 40 million gallons per day or greater of full secondary treatment.
And that means that they'll have to implement changes in the plant infrastructure, if you will, the machinery, equipment, to accomplish that. Is that correct?
Correct. The one slide in my presentation that I circled, the tanks that will be constructed,
right,
are the infrastructure that we will be investing in to make that happen.
Thank you. And so that I clearly understand, perhaps Mike or Jason and or Mike, you could explain what happens if we didn't do this. What are the legal ramifications against the city by EPA, the state, whoever, whatever? What will happen to us?
The city will be exposed to compliance orders, which will force us to do the required thing, as well as significant fines. And I think other cities have experienced, along with that, lawsuits from private groups such as Baykeepers or Sierra Club, which then would extract their own fine against the city as a way to force the city, in the name of the environment, to comply. In extreme cases around the United States, the EPA has actually stepped in and taken over systems and imposed taxes or fees on the residents because from the EPA perspective and the state regulator perspective, there really is no discretion, and they draw a pretty hard line that cities and other operators must protect the environment and just must do what is required. So unfortunately, it's a pretty big stick. I at one time flew to Dallas thinking I was going to challenge the EPA. That did not work out well. And so from experience, we're certainly taking in my opinion, the wiser path by addressing it on the front end rather than on the back end.
So if we got to that point and the EPA were to invoke fines or taxes or fees, there would be no input from the public whatsoever.
No, they actually have the authority to step in
and just do it.
And just do it.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarifying. That's it for now, Mr. Mayor. I have some other issues, but I want to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Rich Garbarino. Councilmember.
I'll defer to the women. We are dominated by women protesting tonight, so I'll defer to the women on the council.
No,
Councilmember Carol Matsumoto.
this water has been an issue. I sit on numerous regional bodies in this county, and this has been in the forefront. We've had meetings, all of the council members, we've met with staff, we've met with the city managers in our weekly meeting, the city manager, singular. And it's a good thing for the environment, but unfortunately, someone has to pay the price, and that's us. And I've done some separate research, and I'm comfortable that I will be supporting it. I do want to apologize for the city. Councilmember Garbarino and I attended the May meeting, and you were right about the parking. Tonight, we had a lot of takeaways on the administrative start and noticing it was horrendous. We have learned also when we were at the May meeting at Mag Center, I live in a condominium, and it comes out of and I didn't see it, but it was pointed out by many of you here this evening, the errors in our communication, incorrect dates to the numeric dates, and I want to apologize, and I know we've learned from that, and I know that it won't happen again.
Mr. Mayor, could I just piggyback on Councilwoman Matsumoto's comments? Yeah, I was going to say that a bit later, but could we have done better? Yes, absolutely. And should we have done better? Yes, absolutely. But we'll learn from our mistakes, and I think the Councilwoman's right. We will do better. I heard somebody mention about incompetence, and I don't think our staff's incompetent at all. Quite frankly, I tend to disagree with you, ma'am. You're entitled to your opinion. I have mine. I support what this staff does 100%. Do they get it right all the time? No. But for the majority of the time, they do. This is a very hardworking, dedicated staff. I want to thank them for what they've done to get us to this point tonight. Doesn't mean the way this was done is right, but we will make it better. So I just wanted to get that out there. I agree with you, Carol. It can be better, and it will be better.
We'll do it.
Just really short, just kind of piggybacking off what Councilwoman Matsumoto said as far as the location and the noticing. I'm not a property owner. I currently rent, but I think informationally it would be good to get that information out citywide, because for me, regardless, with this going through, it could affect my rent. It could affect anyone else's rent that goes with it. So while it goes to parcel owners, and we have to receive ballots from the parcel owners, but those that are renting, they're also affected with it. So I concur with the location. I can only say by example, like Magnolia and Senior Breakfast, and there's no parking. I can only imagine how many more you can have it at that May meeting, and the communication and dates and so forth. Definitely takeaways that we wrote down as well. So I appreciate everyone for being here tonight.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Normandy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that what I've learned in the many years of serving on the town council is that there are humbling times for council people when we recognize that we don't have the autonomy and the authority to move in any direction. And unfortunately, I think this is one of those times. And so we will disappoint a great many people in South San Francisco tonight, and people who have sincere concerns, more than the 380 people that sent letters. Behind every letter, they say there's 100 people that feel the same way, but they didn't bother to write the letter. So we know that this is a real concern in South San Francisco, in all communities, because there seems to be no end to increases. At the last council meeting, we raised your scavenger rate. We have a formula, and it's based on the CPI. And they only get 80% of CPI, but they got a raise, and you'll get an increase on your scavenger bill. we all, in South San Francisco, we were marvelous. We all worked overtime to save water. You know what the reward is for that? You'll pay more for the little bit of water you're using. And on it goes. It's frustrating. I think that when you reach that point in life where the paycheck is not going up, and we have to live on what we planned for, that future gets scary pretty fast. And I am thankful that Mr. Futrell and his staff were able to look at the numbers and crank them down. If things go very, very well, those last small increases are sometimes not needed in their entirety. So one never knows. The Limited Income Assistance Program, if that was yours, Jackie Williams' idea, was that Jackie Williams? That's the best idea Jackie Williams has ever had. If you know Jack. Well, I do have one question. So we have to be able, Brian Schumacher, plant superintendent, we have to be able to process 40 million gallons per day to what stage? How did you put that?
Okay.
Raising our capacity.
Raising our treatment level.
Yes.
Currently, we have a total secondary treatment capacity of 30 million gallons per day, meaning it meets the stringent secondary standards imposed by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for basically any community in the state of in the country. We need to go up to 40 million gallons per day of total secondary.
So at one point there was conversation, I don't know if it was your number, I think it's actually in the staff report, 62 million gallons discharged per day. Is that like a seasonal number, or is that with the other participants? What is that number?
Sure.
62 million.
62 million gallons is the total number going out of the back of the treatment plant, and that does include the North Bayside System Unit.
Okay,
or
the outfall
our
lines
partners,
discharge
our
is
total
that
outfall.
extra 20 million. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't see much room for movement on this. I certainly understand the dilemma, and if I was maybe a more clever politician, I might find a way out from this. But I think that Mr. Griffin got up. A lot of us know Mr. Griffin from his auto shop, and $676 is not a bad amount. I have a friend who opened a new restaurant on Linden Avenue, and he gave me his notice. They're receiving notice of what it will be. And it's not just based on the flat rate, it's also based on what you're doing. So it's a restaurant, a little different animal, $17,000 for his use of the sewer system. And one of my favorite restaurants on Grand Avenue, I'll put in a plug, Cable Car, she is faced with $3,800, and it's a very small little restaurant. And she works there every day to make her money. So there's not a lot of room to move on this. One of the answers someday might be to put the outfall line in the Pacific Ocean, because the problem with the bay is it's kind of a stagnant body of water, and there's not a lot of mixing. But I can only imagine what it would cost to pump to the Pacific Ocean. But when you saw those Daly City numbers for the North County Sanitation District, their outfall line is in the Pacific Ocean, and my understanding is that the requirements are less stringent, so they pay a little less. Anyway, so that's all for tonight. I'm sorry I'm going to disappoint you, but I think I have to support this, and I appreciate the extra effort. And I most appreciate, there are so many evenings where we speak to just each other. I most appreciate, you don't have to leave happy with us, but I do appreciate you participating in the system. And there was an outcome from this, right? Two outcomes, a little bit less, a little rebate for those that might be hurt the most, and we're going to be watching it a lot closer. These 5 council people and those 390 people that signed letters are going to watch this a lot closer every year. So it's a good outcome.
Just if I may follow up something, there's, I think, 3 of us here on fixed incomes as well as many of you. None of us like increases. We've just got hit with a gas tax increase, and as the councilman mentioned, our garbage rates are going up, water's going up. 6 months ago, I paid $1 or something less for gas. Now I don't have a choice because I have to drive. A few years ago, I paid $29 to watch television. I now pay $153 to watch television. It's but they got you. So, what can we do? I share Mark's comments. You're probably not, I know you're not going to leave here happy, but then neither are we really, because this is going to affect us too, all of us, even though Liza's a renter, a tenant, but it's just going to affect her. So,
Rate increase.
we share your empathy with, we empathize with you, and unfortunately it's a tough decision that we have to face, and it's one we're going to have to make, and it's not always a pleasant outcome, but it has to be done.
Thank you. Any other comments on this side? No. I'd like to just summarize my feelings about it. First of all, I really, truly thank all of you who took time out from your busy life to be here to talk to us today. And I also understand the situation that we all are facing. I'm on fixed income too. And I also wanted to highlight some of the things that have made this situation so critical. One is we have regulations of EPA, we have regulations of state, and we have regulations of the local regional bodies that in order to function as a city continually, we have to obey them. That's a law. And the way we set up the rates is also processes a law. We have to meet certain requirements, and we have met those. I understand that some of you noticed that the quality of our information and communications and your ability to participate in those steps were not fully comfortable or convenient. And on behalf of the city staff and myself and the council, I like to say we would like to work on it, and perhaps we can make you a little bit feel better next time it comes around, if it does. Please be quiet. I appreciate that. I also wanted to tell you that in spite of all the rhetoric and everything that has been said, the staff has went backwards trying to figure out how to reduce this shock. Our sewer rates have always been less than they should have been in the past also. As a matter of fact, what is happening that the standards of the state and the legal standards that we have to meet in terms of quality of water that we can discharge in the bay has been ordered for us to be better and better over the last few years without corresponding increases in the revenue coming to the city. And our engineers and our staff has been working very hard trying to make sure that we meet the necessary requirements. It's not a choice. As a city, you cannot stop the flow of the sewage, and you cannot stop the outflow to the bay. There's no other way. So the staff has been working very hard trying to find solutions, both in terms of engineering, technology, as well as financially. You heard the city manager today on how he reviewed, based on your inputs in the last meeting, the risks that he was assuming before in the first time he went over the rates, and then he sharpened his pencil and he came back today with a little bit lower rates, even though they are not perfect in the sense they are not all zero, but they are less than they were before. And on top of that, our city manager also mentioned that in case you're really a case where the situation becomes very hard and you are a family or a person who cannot afford, and you are already under the program of care by PG&E or Cal Water, we will also honor that, and we will send you a rebate that will make, based on my calculation, the increase is practically zero for you. Yes, wasn't that am I wrong?
Practically zero. It's a $60 rebate, and I think if you do the math, $72 a year.
So from $72, it becomes $12.
$12, yes.
Okay, thank you. I was wrong. It is $12, not zero. So based on that, I understand your anguish, and I certainly appreciate your comments. But given the overall perspective I have of the situation, I'll have to support the increase requested by the staff. Yes.
And just, the city attorney and I looked up SB 231, and it does not impact you on anything we are doing this evening.
That is correct. Just to clarify, SB 231 would change the definition of stormwater for under property-related fees. So the process to raise fees for stormwater is different than sewer and garbage and other water rates. This bill, if passed, would put stormwater into the same category as sewer rates like you're considering tonight. And it has no impact on tonight's action.
Thank you very much. Unless there's any other discussion item by the council, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Well, I would reluctantly make the motion to approve this.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, there's two resolutions on this item, and this is...
Please, would you please lead us through
Yeah, so this would be resolution, I assume, Councilmember, this is a Resolution 1A, raising the rates for the 5-year rate plan.
That's correct.
So the motion has been made and seconded. Could we have the roll call vote?
Mayor Gupta?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Normandy?
Aye.
Councilmember Diego?
Aye.
Councilmember Matsumoto?
Aye.
Councilmember Garbarino?
Aye.
So what's the next motion required, Mr. Attorney?
So the resolution to adopt the rates is passed, and this item is, item 1B is not necessary now. So this item is...
So that motion was
passed.
enough?
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you very much. So the matter has been taken care of, and we can move to the next item.